Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Browns, little over a month, they'll be out at the Greenbrier for training camp. Kind of interesting. Defense trying to keep atop the NFL. Ryan Clark, former defensive back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, on how the Browns defense can learn from that playoff loss to the Texans last year.
I think it's something they'll get more of offensively from other teams. Go back to that game. There was a ton of motion. There was also a lot of condensed splits, right? There were play action passes, deep crossers, and posts. They were trying to run away from leverage. They wanted to make sure they could know exactly where the defenders were and run away from that and allow C.J. Stroud to put the football wherever he needed to. I believe they'll see more of that. There was so much man. I believe that Jim Schwartz is going to have to be a little counterintuitive and play some zone, allow them to see the football, have some fire zone where we're playing more matchup than man every snap. That way teams won't be able to pinpoint exactly what you're in and use it against you.
Let's welcome in G. Bush from 92.3 The Fans, the Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. G. Bush, I think Jim Schwartz referred to that earlier in camp as the changeup. They're going to find some changeups, and that kind of is talking a little bit about what Ryan Clark was talking about there.
Got to have an off-speed pitch. You know, in comparison to baseball, it's nice that you throw 98, 99 miles an hour, but if it's straight, guys get a scout report on you. Guys are going to put that in play, and guys are going to hit you hard. Got to have something to keep guys off, off target, off schedule. And the thing that I saw with Ryan Clark, and he is correct with this, one of the things that the Browns struggle with defensively, and I've homed in on that, and I went back and watched, pretty much all these games over multiple times. And the things that you look at it that really hurt them in the Rams game was, the jet motions, the really quick motion, then snap the ball and throw it to the wide open guy. There is games against the Denver Broncos. We had some of that issues with the Broncos and the motion plays, and obviously with the Texans. And so some of the times that when you're in man coverage and you guys are running around back and forth trying to figure out, is this guy in motion, and then they snap the ball and guys are wide open. That's part of the game right now. But right now, people are manufacturing easy yards on that play just because you're in man coverage. The wrinkle is, hey, let's run some zone. Let's run some cover three. Let's run some things that we can disguise and come out in man, but then shift to cover three. Here's the issue. Joe Woods was a guy who played a ton of cover three, right? And we talked about Joe Woods and his scheme and how he was to get victimized. The Cleveland Browns just don't play zone very well. When you look at it back in the day, you still had a lot of those guys on the team, whether it was Greg Newsome, whether it was Denzel Ward, those guys. There's a lot of times where you're looking around and guys are saying, who do I have? Or whose man was that? Was that your guy, John Johnson? That type of stuff can't happen when you're in zone. And I think, yes, one of the main wrinkles was last year, one of the main things was, hey, let's get our corners playing fast. Let's get our safeties playing fast. Let's make sure we can identify who we got coming out of the huddle and play fast and lean on your athletic ability. But if you're going to be able to beat some of the good teams with the good quarterbacks, they're going to play those mind games out there. You're going to need other things that you can lean on, and you need to be able to play some zone without giving up, huge plays for touchdowns. Because you don't know who you're guarding. So I think that's an area of opportunity for the Jim Schwartz defense. I think it's an area of opportunity for the secondary in general. And I think that's the next evolutionary step of this defense.
So one guy that played really well in that Texans game, I think, is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Seemed like he was all over the field. He's in the final year of his rookie deal, which means he is likely going to get a new contract, you hope, and you hope it's pretty soon. Here's a look at what the top 5 linebacker salaries were. You got Roquan Smith, 5 years, $100 million, so it's $20 a year. Fred Warner, 5 years, $95.225 million, $19 million a year. Jermaine Edwards, 4 years, $72 million, $18 million a year. Matt Milano, 2 years, $28.33 million. He's a little older, $14 million a year. Patrick Queen, 3 years, $41 million, $13.6 million per year. Gives you an idea of what it's likely. I would assume they're going to want to extend him. And if I'm Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, that's the neighborhood I think I'm performing in.
Yes. I said it, at the end of the last year. JOK was the only guy that really kind of showed up defensively for the Cleveland Browns. He was all over the field against the Texans. You take a look at what he was able to do, 20 tackles for loss. You take a look at the interceptions, 100 tackles. He's a guy that is a 3-down linebacker. And last year he showed you why he's so devastating is because he's not your traditional linebacker that's going to take on blockers. One of his name of his game is speed and getting around guys. And when you watch how he maneuvers and he shakes and moves and in space where guards are trying to climb to the next level, it's just funny watching this. It's almost Garden Allen Iverson with on a pick and roll when you switch with the big man. It's just like he's just running around people. So you take a look at this division and you got a guy like a Lamar Jackson. You got Joe Burrow, who is a mobile enough quarterback. Josh Allen is another guy who's going to be running the football a lot at quarterback. When you have a guy of that caliber and that speed that you can run sideline to sideline with and be a 3-down linebacker and never leave the field, those linebackers are a dime a dozen. There's a lot of people who say, now you don't need a linebacker. You may need a linebacker who's a coverage guy in the nickel, or you may need a first and second down linebacker that's going to be in there to kind of be a thumper and stop the run. You got a guy in JOK who's versatile enough to be in the packages in nickel, and he's still, even though he's undersized, he's the new wave. He's the new hybrid of linebacker. I expect him to get that deal done, and the Cleveland Browns should be looking to sign JOK to a long-term deal.
All right, so this is kind of interesting as well. 2023, the Browns only saw 3 quarterbacks who finished in the top 12 in QBR. It was Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, Matthew Stafford. 2024, they will square off against 7 who ranked top 12 in QBR. Jackson, Prescott, Herbert, Mahomes, Tua, Hurts. The defense will be challenged, and some of those guys are mobile and hard to bring down. So the defense better come to play.
They got to be ready right out the gates. This year for the Cleveland Browns, there's no half stepping. There ain't gonna be no, a couple. We want to get off to a rough start, but we'll figure it out at the end of the year. That's not the name of this game. And you take a look at the schedule. You in most of the seasons, you got a bunch of division games the last 6 to 7 weeks of the season. That's pretty much going to dictate who's going to be the champion of AFC North. So when you come out the gates and you got a team like the Cowboys who are in the regular season, Cowboys is one of the best teams in the world in the regular season. Like, they got guys put up Dak could throw for 400. Their problem is what happens when you get to the playoffs. We even talk about the Jaguars. The Jaguars were the darling team a couple years ago. They took a step back last year, but when you look at it, they're going to play a bunch of teams. They're going to catch Aaron Rodgers. They're catching Herbert. They're catching Mahomes. They're catching Dak Prescott first week, Jalen Hurts. They got a bunch of dudes on the schedule that are top flight quarterbacks. But this is what happens when you want to get to the point where you want to be considered one of the big dogs. We sit up here and complain all the time about how the Browns are disrespected. We don't like some of the ranking and the list that these guys put the Browns on, especially with the defense and the players they got. We can't have it both ways. Right? If we gonna sit up here and say we don't like the fact that we feel like we're getting disrespected, when they put the top-notch teams on your schedule, you got to go out and perform on that. So right now, the Browns want to be, known as a Super Bowl caliber team. This is what happens. You got Super Bowl caliber schedule, and we're gonna see how they come out.
Yeah, along those lines, this is from Pro Football Talk 2024 pre-camp power rankings from NBCSports.com. Chiefs 1, 49ers 2. Lions 3, Ravens 4. They have the Bengals at 8, the Buccaneers at 9, Texans at 10, Dolphins at 11, and the Browns 12 ahead of the Rams and Steelers. They say just like last year, Deshaun Watson, biggest wild card in the league. That's awfully low. G. Bush, I've asked a number of people that I've had on the show. Can you ever think of a quarterback that was a 3-time Pro Bowler and then didn't have a huge major career-ending type injury, who just vanished. And the closest anybody got, Sam Monson from Pro Football Pro Football Focus came up with Mark Bulger was a little bit like that. And I'm like, okay. And his thing was he got beat up by that's one of the reasons I would be stunned if Deshaun Watson doesn't play close to what we saw from him prior. There just hasn't been somebody who played at a high level for 3 years and then just went away.
Yeah, it's very difficult to even guys like Michael Vick, right? Michael Vick went to the penitentiary for 3 years. Didn't do anything. No nothing. No throwing. He was in jail. He came out and put up an MVP season after he was in jail. Like there has never been an elite quarterback who, like you said, like just went from being mentioned as one of the top 5 quarterback to just being nothing. I can't think of anything. Mark Bulger is a really good example of that. But for me, if you ask those people, say for instance, Deshaun Watson, the Deshaun Watson we saw against the Baltimore Ravens, if that Deshaun Watson is there the rest of the last year, where would they be at? People would say they had a good chance to go to the AFC Championship game.
Yep.
People will say, well, wow, that Deshaun Watson, yeah, of course, obviously that. And so when that happens, you always say to yourself, I think we are all a prisoner of like today. Like, I'm an emotional guy myself. I mean, they call me the Duke of Knee Jerk for no reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, but like if you really look at it and once you go back and watch every single rep that Deshaun Watson takes, I mean, the Tennessee game, he played well. The Cardinals game, he played well. He played well against the Baltimore Ravens. He didn't play that much against the Colts. Didn't play very well against he didn't play well against the Steelers. The Bengals game was a mess because of the rain, but Browns still won that game. But if you look at it, I mean, his record is 5-1. You look at some of the stuff that he did. He had some good things that happened. I just think it's over exaggerated about how well or bad he played in that season last year, and just get ready for it. There'll be a lot of people that will backtrack and act like they always thought Deshaun Watson was great when he throws for his 4,000 yards and he's back to doing what he is, especially if he's going to play all 17 games. So I'm waiting for it. People will talk about, oh, well, this is the Deshaun we wanted to see, and who would have thought he was playing that well? Well, we told you that all off season. It's just about at this point him going out showing that, and I think he's poised to do that given the fact that he's as healthy as he's been, and he's ahead of schedule in terms of his shoulder and health. So that doesn't seem to be a factor either.
Yep, if he's on the field, Browns are going to be in. It's going to be a lot of fun. Football season for the Browns. G. Bush and I can step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Thanks for taking my call. I want to comment on this Aiyuk situation. I hear that this young guy has like an attitude problem. He only had 3 catches, and he was blaming the team. And our team has chemistry and culture, and I don't know if that's a good move for the Browns. He may be younger, but if he's going to cause a rift in the locker room, I don't think that's a good move. And Cooper is a guy that can teach Jerry Jeudy. Hopefully they get a job done with Amari Cooper.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. G. Bush, I don't know about, attitude or locker room problem or any of that. Amari Cooper is the Nick Chubb of wide receivers. Doesn't complain, doesn't say much, just goes out and does his thing. Most wide receivers at that position, by the very nature of that position, those are the guys that are the flash, and I don't know that about Aiyuk, but if they can find a way to get Cooper done, they need to get Cooper done. He's a big part of this team.
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit too, you know, on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I talked about, yeah, that sounds nice. And usually I'm all for upgrading. And if you ask a lot of people or evaluators, they would probably say that at this point in their career, they would say that Brandon Aiyuk might be a upgrade over Amari Cooper. However, I look at it from a different perspective. I look at Amari Cooper, as you already put on top of that. All he does is go out there and catch the football. All he does is go out and perform his job. Played hurt multiple years here, put up the best yards of his career. And then, you know, you look at what the Browns have had traditionally. You know, receiver isn't a thing that the Cleveland Browns have been able to hang their hat on. Right? They have not been able to have guys that you know, just come in, put up yards, and go home. You know, when we had Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, there's a lot of people say they didn't like the antics, they didn't like the cleats, they didn't like the visors, they just wanted somebody to go out there and catch the ball and don't care if they get the ball or not, and just yeah. Well, you got that. So you got that right now. So, you know, now what is it? You know, just pay the man his money, because at the end of the day, all he does is go out there and catch the football. Plus, do you want to have this scenario? So Deshaun Watson has not played with Elijah Moore all that much, not played with Cedric Tillman, David Bell. Jerry Jeudy is your number 2 receiver. He's brand new, does not have chemistry in games yet. And do you want to trade Amari Cooper for Brandon Aiyuk, who would be a new person and a new receiver and a new system, and have nothing with Deshaun Watson? So that means you would have a brand new offensive play caller, which we assume that Ken Dorsey is going to call plays, in a new system. You would have a brand new number 1 receiver in Brandon Aiyuk, a brand new number 2 receiver in Jerry Jeudy, a guy in Elijah Moore who really has not played that much with Deshaun Watson. Oh, and by the way, Deshaun Watson, who's only played a certain amount of 6 games last year, really only 5 games. And he has a brand new caller, a new system, and new. Nah, I'm cool. I ain't dealing with all those news. Give me Amari Cooper. I know he can show up at practice, catch the football, and he's ready to go.
And add in the whole question with Nick Chubb and his knee. Now you know, Chubb looks to be coming back, but there's another piece. I'm with you. All right, this is from USA Today. Every team's potential breakout players for 2024 for the Browns. They go Jerry Jeudy, revamping the entire offensive staff, including the hire of offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey, a receiver who is in the forefront of every open and separation metric, should be a main benefactor. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with that assessment anymore. They are designing the offense for Deshaun Watson with Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore in mind, and David Njoku.
Yep. So, you know, look, people in Denver will probably tell you, like, you know, I don't know how, and this is my thing. Sean Payton he been living on them Drew Brees years for a long time. He's been living on that Drew Brees island, on the memories. And I'm like, listen, man, when I watch them, they look antiquated. Russell Wilson did not play all that well. I was never watching them and saying, oh my gosh, look at this explosiveness. I never saw that. So for me, people put a lot of it on Jerry Jeudy, because Jerry Jeudy is the expendable one, right? I mean, it's easier to get rid of a receiver and say a receiver is a cancer, a receiver didn't do what he needed to do. That's fine. I'm just saying that when you look at the offense in Drew Lock and Sean Payton, that offense, no real running game. Like, it wasn't like that was a prolific offense and Jerry Jeudy was just the odd guy out. No. I look at this offense. They gave him a new deal. I thought that was a smart move. You don't want all of your receivers going into free agency next year. You give him the move. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a new start for him. And guess what? He has an opportunity to establish himself as the number 1 receiver. That's the great part about it. Amari Cooper may get 1,000 yards, but I expect this guy to crack 1,000 yards. I think he's going to get that. And I think this offense is going to dictate that he's going to get a lot of targets and along with David Njoku. So for me, this vertical passing attack, Deshaun Watson throwing the ball more, I definitely can see Jerry Jeudy being a breakout candidate. And by the way, I watched you. I saw what y'all put out there. Shout out to you and Quincy. I believe Cedric Tillman's looking a little better, and he might have a breakout year as well. I'm seeing that as well.
All right, so this is the top 20 tight ends for 2024 from CBSSports.com. They go George Kittle, the 49ers 1, Kelsey, the Chiefs 2, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride 5, TJ Hawkinson 6. They say David Njoku 7. He is always and has been an absolute freak athlete, but he finally put together the entire package in 2023, emerging as big play threat, strong red zone option, and an excellent blocker. Should be a really good player for Cleveland for the next several years. I think 7's going to be a little bit low for him. I think Deshaun Watson, when Deshaun Watson gets comfortable, think about we've been told this offense is going to look a lot like it did in Houston with the Texans. He was really good on seam routes to his tight ends. And guess what David Njoku can do? He can get deep. He can run.
And by the way, he talked about losing weight this offseason. Talked about he always plays between 250 and 275. He said he wants to be closer to that 250. They had a problem tackling him. It's crazy. It's like, this happens from time to time. It's almost like, when you come into your own and you start, playing and it all comes together for you in the season. It was almost like just understanding that, we doing a lot of baseball references, but it's like, hey, these guys cannot hit my fastball today. I'm just going to blow it past you. There's nothing you could do. David Njoku in the open field last year was just like a realization. Hey, I'm bigger than everybody. And you know what? I don't feel like going down. I don't feel like being tackled today. And he just was running through people's secondaries like a crazed maniac. So, you throw that in on it, and he's going to get more targets. I thought he really came. And by the way, for all those naysayers with Jerry Jeudy's contracts, they had the same situation and same thing to say about Andrew Berry and David Njoku. I don't know why they're giving him this money. He hasn't shown anything. Why would they throw money? It's always getting them at a cheaper deal. Now, when he breaks out, and now under their tutelage, and now that they developed him, now that contract don't look so bad, do it. Hopefully you get the same thing with Jerry Jeudy, but that's what they're looking to do. I think David Njoku is above Hawkinson. I think he's at worst. And by the way, Mark Andrews be hurt a lot too.
Yep.
I'm just saying. He'd be hurt a lot. He's definitely in the top 5 to me.
All right, before I let you go, this from Dog Pound Daily, 4 Browns who could be unsung heroes in the 2024 season. Number 4, another one of the tight ends, Jordan Akins. He was a tight end with the Texans when Deshaun Watson was putting up the big numbers. Number 3, Naheem Himes. Got it, figures to get the ball out of the backfield, catching the football. Number 2, Jordan Hicks. And number 1, the guy you mentioned earlier, Cedric Tillman. I really like Hicks. I think Browns fans are going to be pleasantly surprised when they see what he does on the field as a linebacker. And I think Tillman, everything you hear about Tillman in his offseason, he's set up to be a really good red zone guy. And the dude blocks. So if you're going 3 wides, you need a guy like that. And I made reference to it with Quincy. Sean McVay, Andy Dickerson, Cooper Kupp is a guy that blocks. And that's why he's on the field a lot in the red zone.
Yeah, I like that. I think Hicks, by the way, I think he's a sneaky guy who's going to lead the team in tackles. I just think, you go look at his PFF grades. I think he's an upgrade over Anthony Walker. I think Anthony Walker was a solid guy. He just couldn't stay healthy. I think this is an upgrade. But when you look at Cedric Tillman, watch for using those guys interchangeably, right? So you'll see now, because, Amari Cooper's release package is crazy off the line of scrimmage. So when you get to him as your X receiver, he'll be there. But for the Y and the Z, when you talk about the slot and you got guys opposite, watch how they put Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy, and they'll use those guys interchangeably in the slot. And I always like to have big guys in the slot. You know why? Because you have an opportunity to bring that level of physicality to the middle of the field. Now you look at it. Most of the times, your corners, your slot corners, are guys that are going to be a little undersized. Usually, if you got a big corner, those guys are playing, a boundary, or guys are playing against X receivers. But now you get an opportunity to have somebody like Cedric Tillman working in the slot on working in the slot on a smaller corner. And by the way, those corners that's playing slot, they are priorities in the run game. They have run fits, and you get a big guy like that on one of the small guys, it just looked good, man. I like his prospects, and I'm glad he put a lot of work in. Kevin Stefanski's been talking about that in the offseason.
G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, G. Bush.
Appreciate you.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out, 92.3 The Barber Shop from 8 until noon on Saturdays. Also, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show Monday through Friday, 11 to 1. We're going to take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head to of Truth and Reason.
My call is in reference to the offensive tackles, all coming back off of major injuries. And I don't know how that's in training or how that works, but I do know when you're playing that game and you're running with 50 miles an hour, running to each other, I think that after Sunday game, the Monday should be hot tub, cold tub, or something, and let the muscles relax and heal. And another obvious thing is more games now. And you have practice and preseason, and I think that's a little much on the body. I appreciate you taking my call, and have a great day at Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. So along those lines, the Browns did hire about a week ago, 10 days ago, a new guy that's involved in this, athlete performance and health. Dustin Habnan has been hired. He's going to oversee player health and performance initiatives. Last 12 years, he's worked with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic teams, has extensive experience in overseeing injury prevention as well as research. And again, last 12 years, he has been working with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic team. So a guy that has a very wide knowledge of recovery and prevention. Let's welcome in Brad Ward, Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Brad, the health and medical training, a lot of science involved in that. It's much deeper than it used to be even 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think as many of these kind of guys that you can add, especially with like what went on last season, the rash of injuries, right? And even in years before, they've had certain position groups that have been decimated by injury. So you add somebody like this that's worked with Olympic athletes, I'd add as many people as you can at this area. You want to be at the cutting edge of this if you're an NFL team. It's the difference between having a successful season and not for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. The longer you can keep your better players on the field, the better your chances of winning games are, without question. I know you wrote an article, and I'm curious, analyzing the best cornerback room in football, and I agree with you. I think they are loaded at cornerback.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of the evaluations they're doing are like, best pairs, right? Or best duo. And you could make a case that they're the best duo, I think, with Ward and Emerson, or even like Ward and Newsome would be up there. I know both of them landed in the top 32 of PFF's rankings 2024 season. I thought Emerson kind of got snubbed there on that one. But when you add all three of them in, and Cam Mitchell, and, Halasi, and they just drafted Harden, I think it's hard to – I don't think anybody can really go that deep, and I don't think anybody boasts three starters like the Browns do, right? Like three starting caliber outside corners when you count Newsome, right? Although he's playing inside, he can do both. And for most teams, he would probably be a starter on the outside. So I do think it's the best corner room in the NFL.
And it's going to be more important as you see more 3 and 4 wides. You're going to need three. And again, I think Andrew Berry saw a little bit into the future of where the league was headed.
Absolutely. And to just be interested, the depth, really excited about Miles Harden, a guy that's kind of cut from Emerson's cloth, kind of a mouthy, in-your-face physical corner, right? The Browns like those kind of guys. Schwartz like those kind of guys. I do too. I love it, right? Halasi, they identified right away when they played the Chiefs in the preseason last year. He's long, he's fast. So when you look at the depth chart, though, Justin Hardy is a special teams ace. He's going to make this team. So there's kind of a really interesting position battle between the 7th-round pick, Harden, and Halasi, who made the team last year when the Browns kind of snatched him off waivers when the Chiefs left him available. So I think that's an interesting position battle to watch in the depth area of the defensive backroom, because they don't want to end up with their special teams ace playing any corner snaps. Like last year they got in that situation. You want to try to avoid that at all costs.
All right. You wrote an article, things I think I know about the Browns, which we always kind of talk to you when we have you on. Deciphering the linebacker depth chart, and you kind of alluded to this. Martin Emerson still getting snubbed a little bit.
Yeah, he is. He just not – I mean, he deserves to be on these lists. That's crazy. I mean, he was top I think I have to look at the exact number, but he was top 2 in passer rating, top 4 in completion percentage. In the NFL, I don't know how he's not being listed with the best corners in the league, because he is. I mean, he gets the best wide receiver, and it's a long day for whoever he matches up against every week. So I think he's outstanding, and I think he's going to get a nice lucrative deal to stay here in Cleveland probably next offseason. You mentioned the linebackers. This is another interesting thing. Dave, we're not talking about starters anymore, right? Like, the starters are entrenched, right, on this team. And even their backups a lot of times. But the places that we look for position battles now, we're further down the roster. Who's going to make the team? Who can carve out a small, impactful role? One of the areas that I think this is important is linebacker 3. Now, Jason Tarver spoke. He very much alluded to the idea that Tony Fields finished last season as linebacker 3. But now you've got Nathaniel Watson there, who you just took a higher draft pick on. Fields is in his final year on his deal. So I think that's an important kind of battle to watch as we go into training camp as well. Who gets that third? Like, they don't play a lot of downs in base, and they're not gonna. But when they do, who is that third guy they call on? And who's the guy they call on for depth when JOK needs a break or Hicks gets dinged or whatever happens throughout an NFL season? So I think it's kind of between Fields and Watson there. And I thought it was interesting. I pointed this out in the article. Tarver, they have really trusted, with decimated linebacker rooms, to get quality play out of, like, no-name guys and guys they pulled off the streets, like the Reggie Raglins and all that stuff, like the past few years. And he's done a really good job with it. He's terrific, right? But this year, he was going through, he's talking about all the linebackers in the room, and the one guy he didn't mention was Devin Bush. And I thought that was kind of interesting. He mentioned every single linebacker in the room except for Devin Bush. So I wonder about his future with the Browns.
Yeah, to your point about base, I think I saw somewhere they played base. It was either 16 or 18% of the time, and it was the lowest in the NFL. So
yeah,
they want to get to the 2 linebackers because they like their safeties and their cornerbacks. This is also kind of, you wrote an article about this, examining the betting futures for the Browns in 2024. Win total over under is 8.5, and it's over is minus 135, under is plus 115. AFC North odds: Ravens are plus 130, Bengals 145, Browns 600, Steelers plus 800. I think that should be much closer. I mean, if you want to argue that the Ravens and the Bengals have a better shot, okay. I don't think it's 5 or 6 times better. And then the AFC Championship odds: Chargers are at plus 2,000, Jaguars and Browns plus 2,200, Steelers plus 2,800. Super Bowl odds plus 4,000, which is 17th in the NFL. Again, all those I think are a little low relative to, the question marks about Deshaun Watson. And 8.5, I feel pretty comfortable going over that. I feel pretty comfortable hammering over 8.5, because I think if Jameis Winston has to play, you're going to win.
Kind of the point. I mean, Casey just said it the other day. He's like, Winston would get us 10, it's crazy. Now, the reason I kind of dived into the betting market, Dave, is because you're getting all this, what we feel like, or at least I feel like, is bias power rankings, right? Or the Watson tax power rankings, kind of. So I wanted to see how the betting market compared to those, right? When your entire business model is based on you being accurate with your projections, there shouldn't be any bias involved. However, what we found were very much similar results, right? And that's the Browns at plus 600 to win the division. I mean, come on. That just seems wild. Them behind the Chargers, who roster-wise I don't think are even close. Now, quarterback, you can make a comparison, and I think their coaching hire has a lot to do with that. But that would be a point low where I would say, like, the Chargers and the Browns, that doesn't really seem to add up to me. Tied with the Jaguars at plus 2,200 to win the AFC. Basically, what we found is the same thing, right? They 8.5 wins. It was 9.5 last year, Dave. They soared past that with 5 quarterbacks, 4 of them getting wins, 4 different quarterbacks getting wins, to 11 wins, and you come back with 8.5 this year. Now, a lot of people are going to point to strength of schedule, but the strength of schedule measurements, they never really carry over accurately to the season, Dave. They just don't. They're based on last year's results. They don't. There's going to be injuries. You're going to play backup quarterbacks. Things are going to change. Teams you thought were going to be good aren't. So that stuff goes out the window when the season starts. So 8.5, I agree. Hammer the over.
Brad Ward, Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
Anytime, Dave. Thank you so much.
Brad Ward, make sure you check him out. He is the host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Also, you can check him out on the Orange and Brown Report as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Lance Risland with a film breakdown video analysis. Sports4CLE. He'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. We're going to take a film breakdown video analysis. 3 players that could contribute big this fall for the Browns when their number is called, whenever we do film analysis video breakdown. We welcome in Lance Risland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So, Lance, these are 3 guys that you took a look at and you think they're trending in the right direction when they get the opportunity. Not necessarily stars. First one is a guy a lot of people have talked about this offseason, Cedric Tillman. What have you seen with him?
Well, you know, he had 21 receptions last year, and he wasn't really involved. And I think it comes a lot from having an injury his last year at Tennessee. But physically, you think about a receiver having all the tools, and he's got all the tools. He releases, things like that. And what he does really, really well is here, you know, this doesn't get his foot in, but this kind of tells you what I think he can do, right? He can be a red zone guy. Then I was really impressed with his movement skills. Here he just runs a quick hitch, little pro turn, did a great job. And then just kind of watching him physically, right? So when you see him physically, and you're up, you know, you're 5 feet from him, he's such a big kid, and I think right here is what he can do. He can go up and he can get the ball in the red zone. So, no, I don't think he needs to be a starter. No, I don't think he needs to be a star. But what he's done, he's had a great offseason. And the guys that are in this segment, all these guys have physically improved how they look. And Cedric Tillman is a guy who has all the tools, and he's a guy who's got to be productive in the red zone for the Browns. I think this Amari Cooper thing will work out, but they still need a big, long guy who's a matchup issue in the red zone, and Cedric Tillman's that guy, so I look for him to have a big role in the red zone. Now, I don't think it'll be a high number of catches necessarily or maybe huge yards this year, but I do think he's going to have big catches when they need him in the red zone because teams are going to be focused on Cooper and Njoku. So I look for a big year from this guy. But I'll tell you what, I was also impressed in his movement skills. He doesn't lumber. He's got some good feet and length and things like that. So just really impressed physically with Cedric Tillman during mandatory minicamp.
Yeah, you mentioned 6'3", 215. Tell you what, the thing that impressed me about him a season ago was his blocking. And I think that plays into some of the things that you're talking about in the red zone. You put him in the red zone because if you ask him to block, he's going to do a pretty good job of it.
Well, yeah, and obviously with Dickerson coming in, Dickerson has that McVay background, right? So what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of window dressing. I just talked earlier today about the Browns' offense is not going to be a ton different after the snap, but there will be a ton of difference before the snap with movement and things like that. So down in the red zone, you're going to see those receivers be condensed and be either run routes or block on the edge. You know, they're pin and pull counters. So they're going to be asked to do a lot of blocking, and they need some big bodies in there besides Njoku. So, yeah, not only his receptions, but I agree with you. That ability to block and set the edge will be huge for Cedric Tillman getting in the game.
Yeah, as you mentioned that, you mentioned Sean McVay, and I'm not saying he's going to mimic this guy other than his blocking. Cooper Kupp's a guy that gets overlooked. He blocks really well for a wide receiver, and I think Cedric Tillman could carve out a kind of niche getting on the field because of that. They're not going to know if it's a run or a pass because he can play both. You know what I mean? It disguises. There's no tell with Cedric Tillman on the field.
Well, for me, in blocking, you know, what's funny with blocking is that a lot of guys, there's a lot of technique involved, but blocking as a receiver is all want to. You gotta wanna block. You know, you're not a pass catcher. You're a receiver. And with receiver comes a lot of responsibility, and blocking is one of them. And McVay has kind of brought that into kind of vogue where you can be in a condensed formation and you got to block a linebacker. You got to set the edge on a defensive end. You got to be athletic enough to block a safety. They're big on leaving corners blocked because corners usually don't tackle very well. So, yes, Tillman fits this role on what they want to do, especially in 11 personnel in the red zone. Now you got Cooper, Judy. You can maybe get more out of there. You put Tillman in there, jump ball, set the edge in the run game. A lot of flexibility they can do if Cooper and Judy are as good as people think they are. Moore and Tillman could have big years, both catching and blocking.
So the second guy we're going to look at, Alex Wright, 6'5", 267-pound defensive end. He took a big step up, particularly towards the end of last year. What do you see with Alex Wright?
Well, first and foremost, physically, he looked amazing. So this is a little handover move that I had not seen from him up to this point. So when he's at UAB, he's at a small school. And when you're at a small school, we've talked about this before, he really just won by getting on his shoulder and being bigger and faster and athletic than everybody else in those non-Power 5 conferences. So he's kind of had to take that athletic ability and turn it into pro skill set. So again, right here, you can see that right arm come over top, finish with a rip, and then he chases down the quarterback. Second play, you're going to see him, they run a jet sweep. They're actually going to block to their left, and they're going to leave him on block, and he's athletic enough to make a play. Now, the difference between what I see on the film here and what I liked about him last year is he's a lot leaner this year. He's not lighter, he's leaner. He looks absolutely physically, he's as good as anybody has improved on how he looks. He's long, he's lean, his weight is very similar, so he's lost fat and added muscle. So I think he's going to be a very key role. And again, he's a guy that doesn't have to be a star. You got Sedarius, you got Obo, you got Miles, of course, player of the year. You need this guy to come in and be a spot guy and find a matchup and add depth and be able to play in the second, third quarter and rush maybe down on the guard once in a while. Just a guy who's a rotational guy that can make big jumps. And I'll tell you what, like I said, physically, he was the most impressive on how he's changed his body at mandatory minicamp. Really, really impressed with this guy. Look forward to seeing him this fall.
Yeah, I'm with you. He had a little bit of success last year. You always want to see how a young guy, especially from a smaller program, takes that next step. How much did the success show him? Yeah, I belong. I mean, in his mind, he should be like, yeah, I'm an NFL defensive lineman. Now I can become a really good one.
Well, as you and I have said, the things that he has coming out of UAB, you cannot teach. You cannot teach his length. You cannot teach his speed. You cannot teach some of those things. Now, some of the finite things you learn as a defensive end with your pass rushing skill set, your pass rush repertoire, and what you're going to use, your ability to play the run, that'll come. You can coach those things up, but you can't coach up a guy who doesn't have size and speed, and he has those two things. So what the Browns are doing with their roster is they're bringing in these guys that have the physical tools. There's certain physical tools, regardless of how good you are. You have to be a physical size and have physical ability to play in the NFL, regardless of how many plays you've made in college. And he has those physical tools. Now he's getting coached up. And you can get coached up because you don't have to be a star right away. There's stars in front of you. You can just improve every single day what Alex Wright is doing. I think he's going to have a really successful season.
Yeah, I'm with you. The next guy that we're going to talk about, Devin Bush, this is the guy that might be the most intriguing to me of anybody on the roster, just because, he was, I think it was third in the Defensive Rookie of the Year voting in his first season in Pittsburgh, and then injured and kind of fell off.
Well, the thing I really, really like about Devin Bush is his ability to run. So during camp, I was just simply right here, just his ability to run. So I'm right on the sidelines watching these things, get a bad knee injury. But you go back, like this film here, this is from his rookie season when he was, in the discussion for Rookie of the Year. And a couple things stand out for me as compared to Tillman, as compared to Wright. Those guys are ascending, right? So those guys are going to get good. This guy came in and was already good right away. And then he had a drop off. And then last year he was way down and he struggled. And I'll be honest with you, I've taken a lot of heat because I think this guy has an amazing skill set. And I think this guy can really be helpful. But I do know this. With the Browns having JOK and Hicks and having that defensive line and having that secondary, this is the guy that's going to be attacked, and this is the guy that's going to be attacked early. Right now, not saying he can't be good, but this is the unknown with the Browns defense. If he can't do it, obviously they're going to get him out and they'll put Newsome in and play more nickel. But this is the guy on first down that I think can really be beneficial for the Browns with his speed and ability to play. And I thought he ran really, really well at mandatory minicamp. That's all I watched. And people said you don't tackle bags in practice. All I was looking for his movement skills. And his movement skills were elite and explosive, and short area bursts, short area explosions. Oh, I really think this guy is going to be, as compared to the first two guys, this is going to be an interesting year. But I think this is a guy who can shine because he has guys around him who can make him shine.
The other thing that I think is, I think Jim Schwartz already had an idea of how he was going to use Devin Bush. And I think that's as important as anything. We've talked about this before. Guys have certain strengths, and all NFL players have certain weaknesses. You just ask guys to do, it's a matter of matching strengths, and Jim Schwartz is really good at that.
Well, I cannot agree with you more. And again, I learned this from my father and his wisdom, but we would often come into meetings and some of the young coaches would say, this guy can't do this and this guy can't do that. And my dad would always say, okay, what can he do? And whatever he can do, how can we implement that into what we do? And I think Jim Schwartz might be the best at it in the NFL defensively, saying, okay, you can't cover. Well, then I won't make you cover, but you can blitz and I'll allow you to blitz. And I think Devin Bush kind of fits in this, right? He plays the run very well from sideline to sideline. He struggles in coverage sometimes. Well, then don't have him cover. And if he has to cover, make sure you have help behind him. And Schwartz does that very well. He does that with all the guys. And that's why his defenses are so good. And you said it best. He doesn't ask you to do things you can't do. There's a reason you can't do things. and probably you can't fix it. But if you're at the NFL level, you have an elite skill set in something. And that's what Jim Schwartz takes advantage of. Devin Bush has an elite skill set. It just has to be tapped in again. And I think it'll happen because he's not going to be injured. I'd be shocked if he's not successful this year.
Yeah, and Jim Schwartz has said, we kind of have to figure out what guys do well in our system. I mean, that's the definition of good coaching.
Well, if you look at a great example of that would be Grant Delpit. If you go back to last year, everybody loved Grant Delpit, and you and I talked, and you said, Lance, why do you think Grant Delpit is going to be so successful? Well, Grant Delpit struggles in zone coverage. Grant Delpit sometimes struggles in man-to-man coverage against certain guys. But I'll tell you what, you put Grant Delpit down on the line of scrimmage and let him play the majority of time down there, blitz, play the run. He's an absolute destroyer of an offense. He's a menace for an offensive coordinator. So that's what Schwartz did with him. He didn't make him cover too much. He doesn't put him in zone coverage. He doesn't make him cover people that he can't cover. But I tell you what he does do. He puts him down in the box and lets him be a football player. And that's what Grant Delpit does best. And Delpit is a great example. He was as good as I thought he was going to be last year because he was going to be able to do what he does and not worry about the things he can't do.
The other thing is, look at the way JOK developed. He went from playing some of the snaps to Jim Schwartz coming out and saying we need to have him on the field for pretty much every snap, to him taking over games late in the year.
Yeah, and if you look at JOK, so I've done a couple breakdowns in JOK. JOK lines up everywhere, and it's not about is he a linebacker? He's a positionless guy. He's a second-level guy in a Jim Schwartz defense. What's that second level mean? It means you play linebacker, you play inside, you play outside, you blitz off the edge, you blitz in the middle. You're a spy on a speed quarterback. You run sideline to sidelines. You play between the tackles. Whatever you do in JOK, if he has anything that he can't do consistently, it would just be, having those big offensive tackles and guards block him straight ahead. So Schwartz doesn't do that very much with him. He doesn't put him in those positions. But what he does do is he finds a matchup for him, and he lets him go play. And again, JOK is a perfect example. I think JOK is going to be one of the top 5 linebackers in the league because he gets to do what he does best, which is play in space and be a football player.
Lance Rislin, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Rislin from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Always really good film breakdown, video analysis of Browns as well as all of football. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We turn our attention to the Cleveland Guardians, one of the best records in all of baseball. We're talking Guardians next on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We turn our attention to the Cleveland Guardians, currently 51-28, best in the AL, 7 games ahead of the Twins in the Central Division, 8 ahead of the Royals, who they are playing this weekend down in Kansas City. Steven Kwan, been one of the big reasons for the Guardians' success. MLB Network's Alex Avila picked Kwan as the one guy he thought should be a starter in the American League in the All-Star game.
My first guy in the American League, I'm going to go Steven Kwan. This guy has impressed me so much, and you talked about him earlier. Just listen to this. He ranks first in average, 377. That's been one of the best storylines so far this year as far as like that chase to 400. But then he's first in on-base percentage, 9th in slugging. Only other players with the highest OPS, Judge, Ohtani, Henderson, Soto. So his slugging percentage goes up. And despite all that uptick in slugging percentage, his K percentage, whip percentage, chase percentage, all gone down, which is nuts. Not to mention, he plays good defense. I mean, what more do you want? And I think he's been one of the best stories of the first half, and I think for sure should definitely be starting in the All-Star game.
Let's welcome in Zack Meisel. He is the Guardians beat reporter for The Athletic. And Zack, I play that to set up the story that you wrote about Kwan's rise from pinball wizard to the Guardians hitting savant.
Yeah, I mean, it's what he's done this season is incredible because he was already a good player. He's been in the major leagues 2 years, has 2 Gold Glove awards. He's been the team's leadoff hitter since a couple weeks into his major league tenure. And so what he's done this season to be able to hit for power, to do that and become more of an imposing threat at the plate without sacrificing anything. He was ready if he needed to. He had accepted the fact that selling out for a little bit more power and not just swinging for the fences, but trying to capitalize on a 3-1 fastball and drive it into the outfield gap, things like that. Take more chances. He was accepting of the fact that a lot of times that comes with more swinging and missing, more strikeouts, things that are the antithesis to his DNA as a hitter. But that hasn't happened. He's done the good things, finding more gaps, hitting the ball over the fence. And in doing so, the strikeout rate is still microscopic. The swing and miss rate, the chase rate, that stuff is all so good. So he's become impossible to pitch to in many ways because you can't throw him a pitch out of the strike zone because he just will refuse to hit it. He'll refuse to swing at it because he knows those are tougher to really damage. So he makes you come into the strike zone, and now you come into the strike zone, and it's not like he's just going to try to flip it into left field for a bloop single, which was the case in the past. Now it's, hey, if you make a mistake in the strike zone, I'm going to turn on it. And, if he would have not spent a month on the injured list, he'd be on pace for more than 20 home runs. So it's incredible just the complete hitter he's become and really just as well-rounded of a player as there are not a lot of guys who have the skill set he's got. It's been incredible.
Now, you mentioned the increased home runs. The Guardians, I saw somewhere they went from, I believe it was second last in baseball to top 10. I think they're 8th currently. That by design, and have you kind of noticed that?
It's partially by design. It's partially also young, talented hitters finding the next gear. Josh Naylor was a good hitter. Last year, I think the big step forward was he proved he can hit lefties so he could play every day, and you're wanting him in the middle of your lineup. And now he's taking it up a notch again where he's on pace for 40 home runs. No Cleveland hitter has had 40 home runs in a season since Travis Hafner in 2006. So you could have Naylor do that. You could have Jose Ramirez do that too. And it's a breath of fresh air. It allows you to win in more ways. They had to string together 4 or 5 singles to have a big inning in years past. Now, maybe it's tough to do that. Maybe only a couple of guys are feeling good at the plate, but those guys can hit a 2-run homer, and it makes a big difference.
So the Guardians reportedly have agreed to a contract pending a successful physical with Matthew Boyd. And Boyd is a guy that's kind of intriguing, 33 years old, left-handed, as you can see, 8 seasons with the Tigers. Went 5-5, 5.45 ERA, 15 starts last year before he had to be shut down. Roughly a year ago today, Tommy John surgery. So he threw for teams in California. His fastball was supposedly lively. A guy, he's made 160 starts since breaking in with the Toronto Blue Jays in 2020. 44-67 is his career mark, a 4.94 ERA in those 160 starts. Has pitched as many as 185 and a third innings for the Tigers. And when you look at his numbers, statistically, it's kind of interesting. So there was a couple of years of 3.89 ERA back in 2021. Never wasn't playing with a great team, so the one-loss percentage is kind of what it is. But he has had pretty good years and was a guy that was trending upward before that arm injury. There isn't a guy that you can go out and trade for, so I kind of like the move. If everything works out and they can build him back up, it's kind of a high reward, low risk kind of move.
Yeah, I mean, there's no risk. It's a roster spot, right? And he's going to have to ramp up now now he's healthy, and now it's a matter of, well, you haven't pitched in a year, and so go have your spring training in July, basically. And it's depth. That's all it is. This team, it's so strange. They're off to this great start. And the one Achilles heel is the one thing that's been the backbone of the organization for more than a decade, the starting rotation. So they need help any way they can get it. And with Boyd, it's, he's not going to be ready for a little while because he has to ramp up. And you don't know, it's their top priority is to go trade for a starting pitcher, but you don't know how that's going to shake out. Trade deadline's in a month, and you'd love to add somebody. You don't know who you're going to add. You don't know what you're going to have to give up. You don't know how that's going to play out. So here's someone who you can have waiting in the wings if it makes sense a month from now or whenever he rounds into form. And regardless of what happens at the trade deadline, you have Boyd.
And the other thing is there's going to be a lot of competition. A couple guys that were supposedly at the top of that list, Jesus Luzardo, injured list. Patrick Sandoval, injured list. Pushes everybody else kind of up that list, and Yankees are looking for pitching. Orioles are looking for starting pitching. So it's not like, go get a really good starting pitcher. Everybody wants one, and the teams that have them, they're going to want huge hauls prospect-wise.
Yeah, it's a seller's market, and it's really tricky because with 3 wild cards in each league now, you have teams waiting till the last minute that they possibly can to decide whether they want to buy, sell, neither, both. The Guardians were in that position last year where they waited until July 29th or 30th or whatever it was to decide to sell and trade Aaron Savali and Josh Bell. And so it's a lot of teams do that. And it makes it so that the prices for these starting pitchers now are exorbitant. And as you get closer to the deadline, they can get a little more realistic, but at the same time, you also have more of a bidding war because everyone's feeling the heat. You get desperate. So it is tricky. And in today's game where it feels like every starting pitcher is one pitch away from an elbow injury that can wreck your season, there's not a team out there that is thinking, well, we definitely don't want a starting pitcher, we'll look elsewhere. No, anyone can use the help, even if your rotation is great.
All right, before I let you go, wrote an article just about David Fry and how he has been so important, kind of his journey to where he is, and he's an important player in the start that the Guardians have gotten off to. Take us through that article as well.
Yeah, so he's such an interesting case because he's a late bloomer, and he came into spring training fighting for a spot as a utility guy, focused all on his catching over the offseason, trying to prove that he can be valuable. He's done that. I mean, it's the big thing is he has hit so well, and he's saved this team when Jose Ramirez was slumping early, when Josh Naylor was slumping in May. You had Fry in the middle of the order to be that power threat. And the big thing is, they got him. Say what you will, I feel like the front office has taken more criticism over the last year or so than they have in a long time for various trades that haven't worked out, when their track record overall is very good on the trade front. And Fry is a shining example of what they've done really well for a long time, where JC Mejia, who was terrible in 2021 in Cleveland, they flipped him to Milwaukee. They got David Fry, and Fry's been sensational this season, a key part of what they've done offensively. It should get some all-star consideration, defensively versatile. And Mejia went to Milwaukee and has been twice suspended for PEDs. And he's out for 162 games right now. So that's one that I think Cleveland's front office is proud of.
Gut feeling, do you think they're able to get a deal done at the deadline?
I do. I just think they have to be flexible in terms of, if you can't, the rotation is an issue. They need help there because just to survive 162 games. But, if you can't get that top line starting pitcher because there's just too many teams in the running, or maybe it's that pitcher doesn't even exist because of injuries or whatever, can you go make your already really good bullpen even better and make that, try to win the way you won in 2016 with just a super dominant bullpen and timely hitting? Can you go add another hitter instead? Like there are ways to be aggressive, even if you can't hit on your top priorities.
Zack Meisel, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Zack.
You got it, Dave. Anytime.
Zack Meisel joining us from Kansas City. He is the Guardians beat reporter for The Athletic. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.